The time now is 5 minutes to 12, 5 minutes to 0 hour, because here in this bookshop in the heart of London, Lady Chatterley goes on sale at 12 noon sharp. So let's wait and see how the rush develops and see what happens.
In 1960, at the end of the most famous obscenity trial of the century at the Old Bailey, the British were finally allowed to buy an uncensored version of a novel by one of their greatest writers, D.H. Lawrence.
Thank you. One only.
Oh, sure.
Only one.
Susan, why are you buying a copy?
Just to see what it's about.
Why do you want a copy of Lady Chatterley?
There's a lot of fuss about it. I wanted to read it.
Why do you want a copy?
Well, we've heard so much about it, I just want to have a look and see what it's like.
How about you?
Because I shall shortly be doing a course on the modern novel at university.
How about you? You're doing the same thing, are you? Excuse me, sir, why do you want a copy of Lady Chatterley? Can you tell me why?
Rather exciting to read.
Because...
Rather exciting to read.
Exciting to read. How about you?
Well, I just want to know what it's all about, that's all.
Excuse me, madam, why do you want a copy of Lady Chatterley's novel?
I'm buying it for somebody else.
You're buying it for somebody else. How about you? How about you?
I just want to see what it's all about.
You want to see what it's all about? Why do you want a copy?
For my wife.
For your wife?
Sexual intercourse began in 1963.
Before the trial, Lady Chatterley's Lover was freely available to readers in Europe and America, but not in Britain. Penguin Books had always championed Lawrence, and they decided to print in 1960 a paperback edition of Lawrence's novel restoring all the sexually explicit language. The trial of Lady Chatterley's Lover became a symbolic battle between the new liberal forces of the early 1960s and the old guard of the establishment.
Members of the jury, it is against this background in which sex is dragged up at every conceivable opportunity. But we must also consider the words. No doubt they will be said to be good old Anglo-Saxon four-letter words, and no doubt they are, appear again and again. These matters are not voiced normally in this court. But when it forms the whole subject matter of the prosecution, then, members of the jury, we cannot avoid voicing them. The word fuck or fucking occurs no less than 30 times. I have added them up. But I do not guarantee that I have added them all up. Cunt, 14 times. Balls, 13 times. Shit, 6 times apiece. Cock, 4 times. Piss, 3 times. And so on. You may think that one of the ways in which you can test this book, and test it from the most liberal outlook, is to ask yourselves the question, when you have read it through, would you approve of your young sons, young daughters, because girls can read as well as boys, reading this book? Is it a book that you would even wish your wife or your servants to read?
Lady Chatterley's Lover was published privately in Italy by Lawrence in 1928. The story of the aristocratic Connie Chatterley's affair with the gamekeeper Mellors was intended by Lawrence to shock. The novel was Lawrence's last sexual testament. It was also an attack on the destructive class and emotional system of England as Lawrence experienced it and wrote about in an ironic sketch of his life.
David Herbert Lawrence, born 11 September 1885 in Eastwood, Nottingham, a small mining town in the Midlands. Father a coal miner, scarcely able to read or write. Mother from the bourgeoisie, the cultural element in the house. At age 12, won scholarship for the Nottingham High School, considered best day school in England, a purely bourgeois school. The next 2 years in Nottingham University, at first quite happy, then utterly bored. Again, same feeling of boredom towards the middle classes, and recoil away from them instead of moving towards them and rising in the world. D.H., however, recoiled away from the world, hated its ladder, and refused to rise. He had proper bourgeois aunts with library and drawing room to their houses, but didn't like that either. Preferred the powerful life in a miner's kitchen. When Lawrence was 25, The White Peacock appeared. But before the day of publication, his mother died. She just looked once at an advance copy, held it in her hand. The death of his mother wiped out everything else. Books published, stories in magazines. It was the great crash and the end of his youth. How beastly the bourgeois is, especially the male of the species. Presentable, eminently presentable. So I make you a present of him. Isn't he handsome? Isn't he healthy? Isn't he a fine specimen? Doesn't he look the fresh, clean Englishman outside? Isn't it God's own image, tramping his 30 miles a day after partridges or a little rubber ball? Wouldn't you like to be like that? Well off, and quite the thing. Oh, but wait. Let him meet a new emotion. Let him be faced with another man's need. Let him come home to a bit of moral difficulty. Let life face him with a new demand on his understanding, and then watch him go soggy, like a wet meringue. Watch him turn into a mess, either a fool or a bully. Just watch the display of him, confronted with a new demand on his intelligence, a new life demand. How beastly the bourgeois is, especially the male of the species.
For Lawrence, World War I wasn't the war to end all wars. It was the killing fields of the bourgeoisie.
I don't blow bombs into the vast air, hoping to scatter a million bits of indiscriminate flesh. Let us meet a man like a man, not like some horrific idea-born machine. Lord, but it is a bitter thing to be born at the end of a rotten, idealistic machine civilization.
In 1915, the rainbow was suppressed for immorality, and the sense of detachment from the bourgeois world, the world which controls press, publication and all, was almost complete. He had no interest in it, no desire to be at one with it. Anyhow, the suppression of the rainbow proved it impossible. Henceforth, he put away any idea of success, of succeeding with the British bourgeois public, and stayed apart.
Lawrence was himself a victim of the war. His novel, The Rainbow, was prosecuted for obscenity, allegedly because of its lesbian love scenes. But there was a suspicion that the trial might have had a political motive. Lawrence was well known for his anti-war stance. He was even accused of signalling to enemy ships.
We find the defendant guilty.
The full facts have never really emerged. It's a bit mysterious.
it seems that there was some Home Office involvement. They had a file on Lawrence because he was known to be an anti-war writer and because he was known to be married to a German. He even had the effrontery to dedicate the rainbow to his sister-in-law in great German Gothic script, Zu Else, on the flyleaf.
The banning of the rainbow meant Lawrence knew that what he most wanted to write about, above all the sexual issues, were unlikely to be published in England. The war ended, but Lawrence saw no victory, only men and women returning from the front line to production line.
Modern society is a mill that grinds life very small. The upper millstone of the robot classes, the lower millstone of the robot masses, and between them the last living human beings being ground exceedingly small. The machine has got you, is turning you round and confusing you and feeding itself on your life.
Lawrence saw industrial society as an attack on human nature and the sacred surface of the planet itself.
The fault lay there, out there, in those evil electric lights and diabolical rattlings of engines. There, in the world of the mechanical, greedy mechanism and mechanized greed, sparkling with lights and gushing hot metal and roaring with traffic. There lay the vast evil thing, ready to destroy whatever did not conform. Soon it would destroy the wood, and the bluebells would spring no more. All vulnerable things must perish under the rolling and running of iron.
Lawrence and his German wife Frida left England at the end of the war. They were never to live in England again. Lawrence spent the next few years in New Mexico, Australia, Italy, looking for societies that offered an alternative to machine civilization, and also attempting to set up his own ideal community. All the time he was offering in his novels and essays his ideas about how modern men and women could live and love more fully.
And it seemed to him that the English were particularly bad at this. They didn't know how to live. And they'd lost the art of living. They'd lost contact with their own inner selves, their own spontaneous natures, which he wanted to reawaken, all the time in pursuit of wholeness. And wholeness for him meant not rejecting the life of the intellect in favor of the life of the senses, as many people sort of caricature his ideas, but finding a balance between mind, spirit, body, all equally holy, equally important. So his great pilgrimage when he leaves England and goes wandering all over the world is really looking for a society somewhere where people seem to him to be really alive, really fully human.
Many of Lawrence's friends were shocked and disappointed by his insistence that the new civilization would not be created by political or social revolutions, but by a radical change in relations between men and women. Some thought this was not really liberation at all, but a private, quirky, sexual philosophy.
The warm blood sex that establishes the living and revitalizing connection between man and woman. How are we to get that back? I don't know. Yet get it back we must. Or the younger ones must. Or we are all lost. For the bridge to the future is the phallus. And there's the end of it. We're not the poor, nervous, counterfeit phallus of modern love. Modern nervous love. Not that. Now you have a poor, blind, disconnected people with nothing but politics and bank holidays to satisfy the eternal human need of living in ritual adjustment to the cosmos in its revolutions, in eternal submission to the greater laws. Mankind has got to get back to the rhythm of the cosmos and the permanence of marriage.
Lawrence returned to England briefly during the 1926 general strike. For almost everyone else, the strike was a political crisis, but not for Lawrence. The 1926 strike for him was rooted in the perversion of human nature by machine civilization. He didn't believe that what the country needed was a political revolution. What the British needed was a sexual revolution. All this became embodied in the novel he wrote when he returned to Italy, Lady Chatterley's Lover. He wanted to show how crucial to self-fulfillment and the future of civilization was a sacred attitude to life and an overwhelming sexual union between a man and a woman.
Life is so soft and quiet and cannot be seized. It will not be raped. Try to rape it, and it disappears. Try to seize it, and you have dust. Try to master it, and you see your own image grinning at you with the grin of an idiot. Whoever wants life must go softly towards life. One gesture of violence, one violent assertion of self-will, and life is gone. You must seek again. You must approach life again and come at last into touch, but with quietness, with an abandon of self-assertion and a fullness of the deep, true self. One can approach another human being and know the delicate best of life, the touch of the feet on the earth, the touch of the fingers on a tree, on a creature, the touch of hands and breasts, the touch of the whole body to body, and the interpenetration of passionate love.
About Lady C, you must not think I advocate perpetual sex. Far from it. Nothing nauseates me more than promiscuous sex in and out of season. But I want with Lady C to make an adjustment in consciousness to the basic physical realities. I realise one of the reasons that the common people often keep or kept the good natural glow of life, just warm life, longer than educated people, is because it was still possible for them to say fuck or cunt without either a shudder. If a man had been able to say to you when you were young and in love, and if the fuck and if the cum, I'm glad, or should he want a woman who couldn't have fuck? Surely it would have been a liberation to you, and it would have helped to keep your heart warm. It is just the awful and truly unnecessary recoil from these things that I should like to break.
He felt that there were really three kinds of language that you could use to talk about sex. One was the language of sort of medical textbooks, like copulation and things like that, which sterilized the whole thing, dehumanized the whole thing. Then there's a language of euphemism, where you talk about making love, going to bed with somebody, sleeping with somebody, and so on, all of which implies that there's something unmentionable about the parts of the body involved. And the only other words are the words that have been appropriated for swear words. So it's a terrible choice for a writer. Which of these do you choose? And he decided to try and reclaim the swear words, to transform them by their context into words which became expressions of tenderness.
Oh, and far down inside her the deeps parted and rolled asunder in long, far-travelling billows, and ever at the quick of her the depths parted and rolled asunder from the centre of soft plunging, as the plunger went deeper and deeper, touching lower, and she was deeper and deeper disclosed. The heavier the billows of her rolled away to some shore, uncovering her, and closer plunged the palpable unknown, and further rolled the waves of herself away from herself, leaving her, till suddenly, in a soft, shuddering convulsion, the quick of all plasm was touched. She knew herself touched. The consummation was upon her, and she was gone. She was not, and she was born a woman.
Oh, if anyone could write like that, how marvellous. And I would, learn little bits and repeat them to myself and think, this wonderful, wonderful writer. It would be in the 20s, I suppose, that I began reading Lawrence. Of course, everybody was reading Lawrence at that time. And I was just down from the university and with exaggerated dreams of being a writer, And I suppose everybody was reading Lawrence those days. See, he was the new, thinking, marvellous writer. And everybody was deeply impressed, except the people who were shocked, you see.
Someone who was shocked was a woman friend of Lawrence's who started to type Lady Chatterley's lover. She refused to continue. And many were shocked by the novel's sexual climax, when Lady Chatterley is sodomized by Mellows. This was intended by Lawrence to be an act of final liberation. But for some, then as now, it was proof that Lawrence was indeed a reactionary and dangerous sexual mystic.
In the short summer night, she learnt so much. She would have thought a woman would have died of shame, instead of which the shame died. Shame, which is fear. The deep, organic shame. The old physical fear which crouches in the bodily roots of us and can only be chased away by sensual fire. At last, it was roused up and routed by the phallic hunt of the man, and she came to the very heart of the jungle itself. She felt now she had come to the real bedrock of her nature and was essentially shameless. She was her sensual self, naked and unashamed. And she shared her ultimate nakedness with a man, another being, and what a reckless devil the man was, really like a devil. One had to be strong to bear him. But it took some getting at. The core of the physical jungle, the last and deepest recess of organic shame, the phallus alone could exploit. And how he had pressed in on her. What liars, poets, and everybody were. They made one think one wanted sentiment, when what one wanted was this piercing, consuming, rather awful sensuality. To find a man who dared do it without shame or sin or final misgiving.